Yo, what's up everybody? King GBL here, and welcome back to a brand new Go Battle League video. Today's video is very exciting. I'm going to be sharing with you all of the updates that are coming next season to Go Battle League, including a massive update which not only changes the move updates, but actually changes how battles themselves work in Go Battle League. They're actually completely changing the game, and all of the updates they're doing are massively impactful. This is the biggest update that I've ever seen in Go Battle League, and I'm extremely excited to share it with you. Firstly, I'm going to go quickly through all of the updates with you, because I know you guys just want to get into the updates here. And then after that, we'll have a look on PvPoke, see the massive impact these changes are going to have, and speculate on what might be quite good next season. If you're excited as I am about this update, drop a like in the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be showcasing a lot of these new changes, and I'm very excited to bring that to you. And without any further ado, let's hop straight on into it here. So as you can see here, we're getting updates to the combat system. The switch timer in Go Battle League will be changed from 60 to 50 seconds. That is an absolutely huge update which will have a massive impact on how things are played in Go Battle League. One of the biggest complaints in Go Battle League is getting stuck into RPS matchups with RPS Pokemon and not being able to get out, being completely locked in. If you lose lead and lose swap, you lose game. Everybody hates that type of feeling, but with an update like this, that allows you to shield once or shield twice and potentially get out of that matchup a lot sooner. It's going to completely change the strategy that people use whenever it comes to charge move selection, because people might want to throw the cheaper move as opposed to the correct move to get out of that matchup faster, and it's going to allow for a lot more counterplay into bad matchups. I think this is a massive update, and I'm very excited about it. Let me know your thoughts on the new switch timer in the comment section down below. Now as you can see here, we're going to go through the attack changes. The following changes will go live on Tuesday, September 3rd. Rock Slide going from 75 to 65 power. That's a massive update, directly nerfs things like Vigoroth. Wing Attack, energy generation decreased. That's a massive update. Counter, energy generation decreased. That's like some of the best Pokemon getting nerfed already. Dig, which of course is really good on things like Gligar, going from 80 to 70 power, which further nerfs Gligar. Parabolic Charge, which is a move known by Pokemon like Dedenne. Energy cost decreased with extra damage. That could be quite interesting as well. Body Slam, absolutely huge one, going from 60 to 50 damage. That's Lickitung, Dragonair, Vigoroth, Greedent. That's absolutely huge. Energy cost decreased on Swift, which actually further buffs Wigglytuff. We have Mudshot, actually getting an increase in damage, but the energy generation decreased. That's really interesting. So you're going to do a little bit more damage, but you're not going to be quite as spammy. Future Sight, bit of an unnecessary update in my opinion, but it's getting a little bit of a nerf in damage. Fire Spin is getting a further buff from 10 to 11 power. This was buffed a few seasons ago, but it didn't quite add the effect to it. Now Steel Wing, very interesting move update here. Energy generation decreased. Now I personally thought that they might go for damage, but they decided to reduce its energy generation instead. Metal Claw energy generation increased, so Pokemon like Empoleon will have another move to use instead of Steel Wing. Trailblaze energy cost decreased as well. That's going to affect a lot of Pokemon here. Zap Cannon, chance to lower the opponent's attack is decreased. I would say probably a 50% chance. Registeel could be pretty much dead in the water after this. Smackdown, going from 12 to 11 power. Bastiodon receiving a huge nerf. Razor Leaf, I literally celebrated, from 10 to 9 power. Finally, Razor Leaf has got nerfed. People are in the crowd dancing. People are so excited. Astonish going from 9 to 12 power. They actually fully buffed this move. It's going to be really good. Fairy Wind, getting a very nice update. 3 to 4 power, giving it that farm down ability, allowing fairies to have some other play, except for being Charmers. Energy generation increased for Karate Chop to of course compensate for the counter nerf. Mudslap, quite interestingly, going up to 12 power, which I think will have some sort of an impact in things like Master League and Ultra League. Poison Sting right here, 3 to 4 power. Pokemon like Drapion are going to hugely benefit from that, of course, as well as Clodsire. Psywave energy generation increased. We definitely can have a look at that. That could be quite interesting for a few Pokemon. Rollout getting an absolutely massive buff from 5 to 8 power. Rollout's going to be hitting like a truck. It's got very good energy generation already. Things like Dunsparce and Miltank will really enjoy that move. Sucker Punch going from 5 to 8 power. That impacts quite a lot of different Pokemon. Now, I thought this update here was quite interesting. Sky Attack from 75 to 80 power, but energy cost increased. So kind of giving Skarmory less energy generation with Steel Wing, but also a more expensive move. And also things like Noctowl and Altaria being further nerfed out of the meta. Surf going from 65 to 75 power and increased energy cost. So they're kind of making things a little bit less spammy, which is quite interesting. Bone Club finally getting buffed into a decent move, as Ionic will be super happy about that. Brutal Swing going lower in power, but energy cost decreased, so that could be quite interesting, especially when you see the Pokemon which can get it. Nightshade finally being a good move, 60 to 80 power, and energy cost decreased. Noctowl could be running Nightshade, which could be quite funny. And one of the biggest updates in my opinion, Power Gem going from 80 to 85 power, and energy cost decreased. That gives Shadow Sableye so much play, and it might mean that normal Sableye, without a return, could be quite viable. And finally guys, the last update we're seeing here for the moves is Shadow Punch going from 40 to 55 power. So that's going to be hitting harder than Body Slam, which is quite interesting. There's a lot of glassy Pokemon which can really benefit from that move. Now hopping into the Pokemon which are going to receive the moves, which is a massive thing, Ledian is going to get Counter. That's absolutely crazy. It's a very bulky and fun Pokemon, and that's definitely quite exciting. Fortress getting Volt Switch is quite cool as well. Being a Steel Bug type, having direct counters to flyers is great. Breloom is getting Force Palm, Hariyama is getting Force Palm, and I believe Mineshaw here is getting Force Palm as well. Very cool that we're doing some updates to all our fighting moves, giving fighting moves a little bit of love except for counter, and kind of spreading that around a little bit. Now Clefable and Togetic are going to be getting Draining Kiss, which is a bait move, a bait fairy move, which I think these Pokemon definitely need. I think that could be really beneficial for those, especially with the buffs to Fairy Wind. Ribombee will be getting it, and of course Tapu Lele as well. You could see a lot more Tapu Lele play in Master and Ultra League there. Pangoro getting Karate Chop. It could be quite a fun spicy Pokemon, not too sure how much it's going to do. And Licky getting Rollout, I think that could have quite unique play, definitely in Ultra League, with that extra damage. It has Earthquake, it has Body Slam as well. Licky also has Shadow Ball. Spiritomb here is getting Rock Tomb, not too sure how much of an impact that will have. Shadow Punch for Dusk Noir, I can barely pronounce it. That should be quite interesting too. Galarian Slowbro getting Brutal Swing I think is quite an interesting update, especially for things like Psychic Cup. Tropius getting Brutal Swing, giving it some sort of a coverage move against Steel types I think is quite interesting as well. Mineshaw, Oranguru both getting Brutal Swing, as well as Passimian and Runerigus. I think these updates could be quite huge for these Pokemon. Runerigus has needed a second move for a long time, and that actually might finally make it quite a decent Pokemon. We're going to see the nuke move, Nightshade, getting added to Zoroa, Hisuian Typhlosion of course, Zoroa, Zoroark. I definitely do think these are more interesting and spicy moves. Hisuian Decidueye will be getting Nightshade as well. So it is definitely quite cool that these moves are getting a bit of love, and these updates are just honestly unbelievable. We're going to have a quick look at PvPoke, but before we do, my opinion that you're seeing the best moves in the game. Mudshot, which is used by all the Mud Boys basically. Counter, which is used by every viable fighter. Wing Attack, getting nerfed. One of the best ground moves in Dig getting nerfed. These updates are massively impactful, and then we're seeing things like Sucker Punch and Astonish getting massive buffs, which will help combat Ape and basically put it down a lot. And quite interestingly, we got Razor Leaf nerfed, which is amazing. Smackdown nerfed, which is amazing. Charm is still up there, but they have buffed things like Poison Sting, and they have buffed a lot of other different Pokemon. They nerfed Registeel, for example, with Zap Cannon, so it's going to be a little bit less common, but of course, there will be a little bit less need for Registeel, with less Wigglytuff, Basti, and Victory Bell hopefully in the meta. So hopping into PvPoke to have a look at what sort of impacts these move updates are going to have, you have Wing Attack. If you look at the top 100 Pokemon, there are so many Pokemon that are benefiting from this move. Mantine, Gligar, Pelipper, Pidgeot, Golbat, Gliscor, and yeah, of course Noctowl and a few other things. Shadow Charizard, getting quite a decent nerf there. What this actually might do is make these Pokemon use a different fast attack, depending on how bad it is with Wing Attack. The Wing Attack, it's getting less energy generation, so perhaps it's going to be 6 to an Earliest, perhaps it'll be 8-7 to an Ice Beam, perhaps it'll be 8 for the Dig now, maybe it's going to be 8 for the Brave Bird. That's a massive pacing difference, and it's going to make flyers feel a lot slower and clunkier, which I do find quite interesting. So you're going to see things like Mantine potentially using Bubble, Bullet Seed. You could be seeing Gligar using things like Fury Cutter. I don't think Pelipper really has Water Gun. I don't think you're really going to see that, to be fair. So I think this move update here in particular, it's quite a massively impacting one. On top of nerfing things like Dig, it kind of almost kills Gligar, which I do find to be quite interesting. With Skarmory, it's going to take Skarmory longer to get to these moves. It's got worse energy generation. I personally think they should have nerfed the damage, especially if they're going to nerf Sky Attack, because it means that you're not like farming stuff down as quickly in terms of grass Pokemon, which I think is kind of the problem with Skarmory. It kind of walls grass a little bit too hard. But with the less energy generation and Sky Attack being nerfed into a nuke move basically, this is quite interesting, and it might just completely kill Skarmory. Now, Empoleon, which is an unfortunate kind of recipient of this, and they're increasing the energy generation on Metal Claw. I think they could definitely do a very healthy buff to this. to make it that you even paste the Hydros in 5 with Empoleon, I think that would be perfectly fine for this Pokemon. Empoleon does not need to be hurt by this, and I suppose while we're looking at this, we might as well look at Metal Claw. The really interesting thing is, with increased energy generation, Registeel actually has a steel move that it can be using. Stunfisk with, of course, Mudshot, which we need to get into, could be using that. Depending on the energy generation of Metal Claw, you could see some very interesting and niche play from these steel types, which you don't really see a lot. Typically, Metal Claw, if you have a look at it, it's listed as a low quality move basically. Low energy generation, low damage per turn. So if they really buffed up the energy on this move, it could make a massive difference, and make steel fast moves a lot more common in Go Battle League. I don't suspect it'll be a massive update. I hope it's enough to keep Empoleon relevant, while of course nerfing your target of Skarmory. Now looking at Rock Slide, you're nerfing a lot of powerful Pokemon here. You're nerfing Carbink, Stunfisk, Vigoroth, which are definitely the main ones. There are a few unfortunate recipients of this. I guess Deoxys gets completely obliterated, having counter and their other move nerfed, so Deoxys not going to be looking too hot anymore. Machamp, of course, getting the counter nerf. It still has Karate Chop, which is a legacy move, so a little bit of a sort of collateral damage with that. So it is kind of good that they've done some updates to the other fighting moves. Credilli, Mew, of course, Excadrill, definitely unfortunate for them. Dunsparce with the hugely buff rollout kind of needs one of its charge moves nerfed, so I guess that kind of works out. But you're seeing that Rock Slide, especially in things like Vigoroth, limited metas where Carbink is available, that's going to be quite a big difference. So as I mentioned, Counter is getting its energy generation decreased. That basically is killing Annihilate to some degree. It could be 9 for the Shadow Ball, 6 for the Night Slash, making the pacing very, very slow on that Pokemon. And of course, if you're killing things like Annihilate out of the meta, it's reducing the need for Wigglytuff, which I think could be quite interesting. Medicham, Poliwrath, and Poliwrath could be going back over to Mudshot, which with its moveset I think is definitely very viable. Again, I could see Machamp going over to Karate Chop, which I think is kind of decent for that Pokemon. We're not going to see things like Wobbuffet. I do think Scrafty is quite an unfortunate recipient of this. This potentially could want to move over to Snarl, really just depending on the type of meta it's going to be, and how heavily the energy generation is nerfed. Definitely a lot of collateral damage with this, and I think they need to think about adding some better moves to these Pokemon. But I think overall, maybe this is quite interesting at the very least. I don't know if it's a good thing. With how Steel Go Battle League is currently, I'll take interesting over anything at this current point in time. We briefly touched on it. Dig has been nerfed. It only really nerfs a couple of Pokemon here. Dunsparce has it, which of course it doesn't prefer. Things like Gligar are getting absolutely destroyed by it. Hippopotamus, quite an unfortunate side effect of it. Marowak, of course, getting buffed Bone Club, doesn't really worry about that too much. So I don't think that's a hugely impactful change across Go Battle League, but it definitely just kind of secures Gligar's place in the Nerf Club. Parabolic Charge, going up to 70 power and decreased energy cost. It doesn't really help Bellyball too much. It's pretty much very one-dimensional with its electric moves, and Dedenne may benefit from it, depending on the energy cost. As you can see here, Discharge is a 45 energy move of 78 damage. Parabolic Charge is going to be 70 power, so unless it's cheaper than 45 energy, I'm not too sure how much of an impact that'll have. And moving on to Body Slam, we're seeing one of the most popular Pokemon in Go Battle League getting nerfed here. Lickitung, more of a neutral Pokemon. I've never been a massive hater of Body Slam, but I do think it might be a welcome change, especially on things like Vigoroth. A lot of limited metas are basically walled by Vigoroth, and this is the best Pokemon in pretty much every limited meta, and I think that could be a good change for it. Dragonair Shadow arguably could be a little bit too oppressive at times, so having a less oppressive move in Aqua Tail could be good for that Pokemon. I think there are a few unfortunate side effects and knock-on effects, but at this point, I do think they have to try to do something with it. You're going to see Zweilous, Double, Titan, Citadel getting pretty bad updates on this. Things like Munchlax, which are perfectly fine the way they are. Gastrodon will be getting buffed Mud Slap, so it won't worry too much about that. And of course, Gradient in Ultra League is going to be much, much less annoying. It will still be very spammy, but of course, only having Mudshot now, which of course got nerfed, which we'll touch on next, and a nerf Body Slam, this Pokemon won't be quite as good. And with the buff Trailblaze, that might be able to offset some of its damage. Mudshot itself is getting more damage, which is quite interesting, 3 to 4 power, but it's getting its energy generation decreased. You're seeing here that, you know, even in the top 40 Pokemon here, there's a lot of Mudshot users here. A lot of these Pokemon are very highly ranked, and I think Mudshot has just been so good for so long that it is nice to finally see this move getting nerfed somewhat. It will be a little bit better for farming stuff down, and it will be quite interesting. Getting to moves a little bit slower with the changed switch clock. It's going to kill off a lot of Swampert, Quagsires, Clodsires, Stunfisk. Of course, with Poliwrath getting both of its fast moves nerfed, it could even end up on Bubble. You really just never know how this update's going to be. Things like Diggersby, pretty unfortunate side effect I would say, and things like Toxicroak. But again, that's kind of the result of these updates. It's going to be impossible to completely balance them. It's going to be probably shifting Stunfisk over to Thundershock permanently. Diggersby's probably going to want Quick Attack. Toxicroak, looking in a pretty rough spot right now, but we'll have to see what happens with that. The Future Sight nerf, as I mentioned, I think it was pretty unnecessary, but it does slightly nerf the Cresselia, Hypno. I don't think it's going to have a huge effect. Uxie and Oranguru. I think that was pretty unnecessary, but I guess they were noticing a huge trend in Cresselia. We're seeing Fire Spin getting up to 11 power. This is really interesting, and I wonder in certain cases will things like Talonflame prefer this move. As you can see here, Incinerate does a lot of damage, but it is quite clunky. This is going up from, this is 3.3 free energy per turn and 4 damage per turn. I wonder if it might be the case that Talonflame in certain cases and certain cups might prefer this over Incinerate. Things like Alolan Marowak getting a huge update with this. Charizard might even start preferring this move, which would be quite crazy to think about. Blaziken, of course, with Nerf Counter may prefer it as well. Heatran in the Master League could be looking a lot better. And you will see things like, I guess if you're Master League players, Solgaleo, of course. This Pokemon might be absolutely crazy now. I don't imagine this will be a massive update for this move. I do think that it's going to see a lot more niche play. But yeah, I think it's good that they're buffing a little bit of fire in the meta. I do think that Fire Spin was a little bit underwhelming, and maybe things like Turtonator, Shadow Ninetales, and a few other Pokemon with Fire Spin might be able to make some sort of a splash in the meta. I do think Incinerate is still the preferred move, but I think it is nice to have a better option. We touched on Drill Blues briefly. This is going to be a cheaper move, which I think could be really interesting for things like Lurantis. I think with Skarmory being a little bit further out of the meta, it could allow grass types like Lurantis to come back in, with of course very interesting movesets. Greedent will of course have it, but it'll have all of its fast moves nerfed, except for Bullet Seed. So this could easily go back onto Tackle or Bullet Seed, to retain its kind of spamminess. Berserker, it could be quite an interesting update. Once again, Oinkologne, Raichu, a few sort of side meta Pokemon, Skuntank. You may see the benefits of this in limited metas. You may see this in Ultra League a little bit with Ampharos, that could be quite useful, and things like Shadow Caesar as more spicy picks. I think it's a good update, but not overall too impactful, I think. As with Zap Cannon, I think it only is really targeting Registeel. Registeel, I guess, arguably has been going on for too long with this high chance of debuffing with Zap Cannon. I don't think Registeel is a current problem in this meta, but I suppose if you were to nerf Counter and Mudshot, Registeel could be running riot. I do worry about Wigglytuff. I'm thinking that Pokemon is kind of getting left to run wild a little bit, but I think most people can probably agree that this is probably a fine update. Magnezone doesn't really prefer this move, and neither does Regirock. So I think it is hitting its target in Registeel, and I think that's probably a fine update. I would estimate that it's going to be a 50% debuff chance. Once again, we're seeing an update to Swift, which further buffs Wigglytuff. Leave this Pokemon alone, please. Clefable, Electrode, Ursaring, Uxie, probably get a little bit better play, with Body Slam going down, and this move going up a little bit. I wonder will Eevee prefer it? I guess it just depends on the energy cost, because as you can see, currently Swift is 66 damage here, including stab, with 40 energy. Body Slam's energy cost is going up, and this is going down. So it may be the case that Swift is kind of like the new Body Slam, which is not quite as good. Now guys, I was literally cheering whenever I heard this move update. We are getting a nerf to Smackdown. Smackdown is going down to 11 power instead of 12. This is going to massively impact Bastiodon. This Pokemon is not going to be quite the RPS king that it used to be. Yeah, it affects Chestnut, Celesteela, Crustle, Rhyperior, which prefers Mudslap anyway. But just not having this extremely RPS Pokemon, just tapping its way through Pokemon in the Great League, as well as Razor Leaf. Honestly, I think this is one of the biggest updates that they've done. Abomasnow, Venusaur, Lurantis, Whimsicott, they all usually prefer other moves. Tropius can see Razor Leaf in limited metas. What I've noticed is, a lot of limited metas just get absolutely destroyed by Razor Leaf. This move has been busted for far too long, and I am so happy that they're finally nerfing this. Victory Bell can hopefully no longer 2-shield through things like a Trevenant. Of course, Razor Leaf will be doing a lot of damage still, but it's not going to be able to 2-shield through like a Venusaur or a Registeel. It's going to be a lot more balanced. There's going to be a real trade-off. These moves do a lot of damage, but unless you get like the perfect alignment, you're not going to be able to cheese your way through all our grass types with a grass move. You're not going to be able to smack down stuff that you ordinarily shouldn't really mess around with. I think this is a fantastic update, especially if you put this along together with the new Switch clock. They're basically trying to make Great League and Go Battle League in general less RPS, which I think is the best possible thing they can do. Now, having a look at more of the positive stuff, they've buffed Astonish from 9 to 12 power. That is a huge update. If you have a look here, Kofagrigus with Astonish could be interesting, 9 to 12 power. As a free turn move, this makes this quite viable. I think that puts it on par with Shadow Claw, if I'm not mistaken, guys. I'm sorry if I've mistaken that, but I think that's what the case is. I think it's a Shadow Claw clone, except for it's a free turn move. If you look at that, things like Kofagrigus, Runerigus, Decidueye could be running a really good Ghost fast move now. A Haunter, which I don't think you're going to really use it. And even some interesting things like Dunsparce, with the buff to Rollout, buff to Astonish. That is a super interesting update. You can see things like Driftblim, Palosand in certain metas benefit from this. Golurk is getting a huge update with buffed Mudslap and Astonish. Very, very happy with this update, and I think it adds a lot more variety to things like Amoonguss, which you don't really see a lot of in the meta as well. I think Fairy Wind getting an update is pretty huge as well. Whimsicott has been getting a few buffs here and there. It's got Seed Bomb buffed recently. It's now getting Fairy Wind's damage buffed. The problem with Fairy Wind has always been farming down Pokemon, and once you land a move, it's pretty difficult to do so. Even if you're using an attack-weighted Pokemon like Whimsicott, it is a very, very tall order for it. I think getting an extra 1 damage could make a massive difference in these cases, especially with things like Jumpluff as well. Quite a bulky Pokemon, struggles to finish its dinner. Having Fairy Wind with a really strong flying move, especially with all of the other flying Pokemon nerfed, that could be quite huge for Jumpluff as well. Galarian Weezing could be quite interesting as well. I'm not too sure if it will become meta, but it definitely is an interesting pick, with a lot of Mudboy's energy generation nerfed, and of course its fast move getting updated a little bit. That could help it somewhat. Definitely a direct help to Clefable, which of course, as I mentioned earlier, will be getting Draining Kiss. Things like Florges, Togetic, Slurpuff, Galarian Rapidash, all of these interesting Pokemon will be getting this update, and it may encourage something like a Mawile to use Fairy Wind as well. Definitely a big fan of this update, and I think it could see some meta relevance. Now with the nerf to counter, you have to do something. They've increased the energy generation on Karate Chop, so you're going to see things like Machamp probably switching over to that move. Being able to spam out cross chops with Karate Chop, that could be actually really good for Machamp. That could be exactly what Machamp needs. Getting to a payback in 9 takes a really long time, so using Karate Chop instead of this with increased energy generation, already you're getting to a cross chop on 5-4. Cross chop could be probably straight 4s. Payback's probably going to be straight 7s. Rock Slide, I guess you probably want Stone Edge nowadays, but it could be straight 6 for Stone Edge. This is going to be a massive update for Machamp, and I'm really, really here for it. Things like Machoke could see a little bit of niche play, Magmortar. It's definitely an interesting one, and I'm happy they decided to nerf counter, but also give all our Pokemon a fighting move and buff Karate Chop. With Mudslap being buffed, you're seeing Grimer, that could be quite interesting, Marowak, Vikavolt, Barbaracle. Not too sure if they will always prefer this move, but it certainly is a cool option for Mudslap. I think you'll see that a little bit more in Master League, with things like Rhyperior and potentially Mamoswine. I think Poison Sting could be quite a big update here as well. Clodsire is already, I think, just about sitting outside the meta. You're seeing a lot of its usage in Play Pokemon currently, this World Championships, so people do see something in Clodsire, which I see as well. I recently showcased it. I think with that increase to damage, that could be the thing that could just about pop it up a tier. It still has the Earthquake for the ground damage. You could run Poison Sting with Stone Edge, Earthquake. That could just set it up a little bit. And I think the same thing with Drapion. This Pokemon has an amazing moveset. Poison Sting is already a good move with the energy generation. Just having that extra damage could make a massive difference for it, and could allow some poisons to enter the meta finally. You could see things like Hisuian Quillfish, which is a fantastic Pokemon by the way. Having a spammier move in Poison Sting allows you to spam out things like Shadow Balls, Ice Beams, Sludge Bomb, Dark Pulse, Aqua Tail. Fantastic and diverse moveset, but it's just, of course, Poison Sting is a little bit underwhelming, Poison Jab is a little bit slower, so having that middle ground could be nice for that Pokemon. And of course things like Ariados will definitely benefit from that. Quite interesting that we're seeing Psywave getting a buff. It's getting its energy generation increased. Psychocod already a very good move for energy generation, 4.5 energy per turn. So we could be seeing Psywave becoming something like a Vine Whip or a Wing Attack, which could be quite interesting for this Pokemon. I don't think Psywave is making a huge, especially with Mr. Vis getting Astonished as well. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference, but I think it's definitely good that they're properly buffing their moves. Rollout, which of course a few other Pokemon are getting as well. Dunsparce, Miltank, Golem, definitely huge direct upgrades for them. Miltank might be running like a double nuke moveset. It may still want Body Slam, but I think once again, that extra fast move pressure with Dunsparce and Miltank is really what these Pokemon have been missing out on. Once again, Sucker Punch, really interesting update. We're giving this to Pokemon like Trevenant, which potentially could benefit from it. The damage is going from 5 to 8, which, if you look at Shadow Claw, I'm assuming Shadow Claw is still a little bit better here. Definitely a very welcome update. Furfrou could be getting a benefit from that. Galarian Moltres, of course, with Nerf Wing Attack could see some benefit from it. I would say Shadow Claw probably still is a little bit better. I haven't sat and worked everything out, to be honest with you guys. I want to get this sort of information to you. Definitely a few interesting Pokemon getting Sucker Punch buffed. Once again, having a look at the flyers with Sky Attack, Skarmory, Altaria, Noctowl, Swellow. A lot of Pokemon getting a big sort of nerf there. I do think Altaria is getting to the point where it might need a second move now. It having kind of double nukes kind of kills this Pokemon a little bit, I think. I don't think Altaria needs to be completely destroyed from the meta, especially when we have a thing like Wigglytuff that's still so strong. And then really interestingly, Surf getting a greater energy cost, but it's got greater power. So that's going to bring this move, it probably does the same damage as a Hydro Cannon now, let's say. Or a Scald, of course, which both do the same damage. But it's just getting that energy cost increased. So I think that's quite interesting. A lot of Pokemon know Surf, a lot of the best Pokemon in the game are on Surf. So I think once again, that's just a massive shake-up. I think they're just taking the best moves in the game, making them a lot worse, and by making the best Pokemon worse, you basically bring up the tide, right? All of these Pokemon are just sitting on the fringes. That just brings everything up that isn't relying on these super powerful moves, and I'm definitely a huge fan of that. Brutal Swing, getting nerfed in damage, but its energy cost decreased. Could be quite interesting. Of course, our Galarian Weezing friend here has it. So it's going to be a lot spammier with Fairy Wind, a lot more fast move pressure. That's definitely quite a cool one. Guzzlord, I'm not too sure if it will prefer Brutal Swing or Crunch, but definitely adds some interesting options to it. And Ampharos getting a further buff as well. You're seeing that this Pokemon with Trailblaze, Brutal Swing, it is getting some interesting move updates, and this may be just enough to kind of push it up there an extra step. I think Nightshade is quite a hilarious one. It's going to 80 power with its energy cost decreased, so it's going to be cheaper and 80 power. So having a look here, Shadow Ball is 55 energy, 100 damage. Currently this is 60 damage, so it's going to be a cheaper move than Shadow Ball, but it's going to be a less damaging move. I think that's quite a cool one, and maybe that could actually like bring Noctowl somewhat back. I do highly doubt it though, because of course Wing Attack and Sky Attack are getting nerfed, but it definitely is something interesting to think about. The Power Gem is actually quite a controversial move, because if you look at it, Sableye getting the buff I think is amazing. It might make non-purified Sableye, pretty fine. I don't know about you guys, but the amount of Sableyes I've caught with amazing IVs which are basically useless, that may no longer be the case, and it might actually be fine to have that now. The one concern I have with this is, its energy cost is decreased. If you have a look at it here, it's currently 60 energy and 96 damage. I do wonder if they're going to just turn it into a Rock Slide or something similar. As you can see, Rock Slide has 85 damage, 45 energy. I do wonder if they're going to make this a 45 energy, 85 power move. I think that might be the way to go. I think they make it a slightly worse Rock Slide, just so you're not buffing Carbink. But it definitely helps a lot. I think it definitely helps a lot with Sableye, and makes it quite an interesting, unique Pokemon once again. Again, Ampharos, and a few other Pokemon do get it here, but I think of the existing Pokemon that have it, these are definitely the biggest recipients of it. You're seeing Shadow Punch going to Haunter, Gengar, Dusclops, Golurk. That's definitely going to be quite cool. And I think once again, with these Pokemon getting these really interesting moves, I think it's going to be such an interesting season of Go Battle League. We're going to be seeing Primarina Com Day coming up quite soon as well, which may make a slight impact. We're just going to see a massive update to Go Battle League, and honestly, whether it's for the better or worse, I'm really here for it. This is by far the biggest update I've ever seen since this game came out. I would say it's definitely the biggest update this game's ever had, and I'm definitely very excited for it. All of these Pokemon getting new moves, all of the existing extremely powerful moves and best moves in the game getting nerfed, with the exception of Charm actually. I think that's so exciting, and I really can't wait to play the new season. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Drop a like if you made it to the end, subscribe. I'm super excited for the update. Hopefully you guys are as well, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you all next time for a brand new video.